Have you ever made a bet where if you win millions of dollars, but the only way to win is to put your sanity, freedom, and literally years of your life on the line, if not your life itself on the line? You probably haven't, and I don't blame you. Risk aversion is a necessity. The risk-taking Dumbo Jumbos of history, almost all of them have failed to pass down their genes. So salute to you for making it outside your dad's ball. Today's story is about a guy who put it all on the line. Maximum risk for maximum reward. A reckless coin flip of heaven or hell, light or dark, life or death. When I stumbled upon today's story, it's completely captured me in a way that I did not want to be bothered by anyone or anything. I just wanted to finish it. And after I did finish it, I was not the same. Before starting today's video, I would like to make a bet of my own. You, dear viewer, you will not be the same after this story. Now, without wasting time, let's get to it. It was a dark autumn night. An old banker was pacing back and forth in his mansion. He was thinking about a party he hosted 15 years ago. There were many smart people at the party, and they had interesting conversations. One topic they discussed was the topic of capital punishment. Most of the guests, including scholars, journalists, doctors, they all thought that capital punishment is outdated, unsuitable for a Christian state, immoral, and just hideous. Some believed it should be replaced with life imprisonment. The host of the party, the banker, he said, "I don't agree. I've never experienced either, but if I had to choose, I think capital punishment is more moral and humane than life imprisonment. See it that way. Execution kills you instantly, while life imprisonment kills slowly, over time, squeezing the life out of you little by little." He said, "Who's the more humane executioner? The one who kills quickly or the one who drags it out of you for years?" One guest said, "I think they're both equally immoral. Their purpose is the same. It is to take away life. And the state is not God. It has no right to take away what it cannot give back." Among the guests, there was a young lawyer. He was about 25 years old, and he was sharp, handsome, and he had a youthful arrogance about him. When they asked about his opinion, he said, "Both are immoral, but if I had to choose, I'd pick life imprisonment. It's better to live somehow than not to live at all." A lively discussion followed. The banker, who was at the time also young and impulsive, he was in his mid-30s, suddenly lost his temper. He banged his fist on the table and shouted at the young lawyer, "I bet you 2 million you wouldn't last 5 years in a cell." The lawyer replied, "Well, if you're serious, I'll bet I can stay not just 5, but 15 years. The banker replied, 15? Okay, done. He said, "Gentlemen, in front of all of you, I stake 2 million. And the lawyer said, "And I agree. You stake 2 million, I stake my freedom." So this wild, ridiculous bet was made. The banker, who had more money than he could count, he was bored with, living a rich life. And this bet, it offers him a thrill. He was visually excited. During supper, he jokingly looked at the lawyer. He said, "Come on, come to your senses, man, before it's too late. 2 million, it's nothing to me, but you will lose 3 or 4 years of the best years of your life. You're still young. Why would you do that? I say 3 or 4 because you will never last longer. Don't forget, voluntary imprisonment is much harder than forced imprisonment. Knowing you can free yourself at any moment will poison your whole life in the cell. I pity you, and don't go on with it." Fast forward 14 years and 364 days later, just one day before the bet is over, the once arrogant rich banker is now pacing back and forth, worried. And the banker thought about that night in the party, and he asked himself, "Why did I make this ridiculous bet? What's the point? The lawyer loses 15 years of his life, and I throw away 2 million for no reason. Will it actually prove that capital punishment is better or worse than life imprisonment? It's all nonsense. It doesn't prove anything." And for me, it was the recklessness of a rich man. And for the lawyer, it was pure greed. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't help us at all. It just takes away from us. He remembered what happened after the party. It was decided that the lawyer would undergo harsh imprisonment under strict observation in a guarding wing of the banker's mansion. During his time of imprisonment, he couldn't cross the threshold, see people, hear voices, or receive letters, even newspapers. He was allowed to have musical instruments, read books, write letters, drink wine, and smoke tobacco. He could communicate with the outside world only through a small window. Everything he needed, like books, music, food, wine, he could get by sending a note through the window. The agreement covered all the details, making the confinement strictly solitary. The lawyer had to stay exactly 15 years, from noon of November 14th, 1870 to noon, November 14th, 1885. If he tried to escape even for a moment, even for 1 second before the time was up, the banker would not have to pay him the 2 million. In the first year, the lawyer suffered terribly from loneliness and boredom. He played the piano day and night. He refused wine and tobacco. He said drinking wine excited desires which were the enemy of a prisoner, and tobacco spoiled the air in his room and it wasn't necessary. He read light books like novels, crime stories, and comedies. In the second year, he stopped playing the piano and he asked only for classic literature. In the fifth year, he started playing music again, and he asked for wine. Observers said he spent the whole year eating, drinking, and lying on his bed, often talking angrily to himself, tearing up what he wrote. And they also said he was heard crying more than once. In the second half of the sixth year, he began studying languages, philosophy, and history with great enthusiasm. He requested so many books that the banker struggled to keep up. Over 4 years, he read about 600 volumes. During this time, he wrote a letter to the banker in 6 languages, and he asked him to show it to experts. If they found no mistakes, he asked for a gun to be fired in the garden as a signal that his efforts were successful. The banker fulfilled his request. 2 shots were fired in the garden. After the 10th year, the lawyer sat immobile reading only the Bible. The Bible was later replaced by books on the history of religions and theology. And in the last 2 years, the lawyer read a wide variety of subjects, from natural sciences to literature. He would ask for books on chemistry, medicine, novels, and philosophy all at once. He read as if he were trying to save his life. He was grasping at different subjects like pieces of a wreckage in the sea, just to stay afloat. The banker thought all about this, and he realized, he said, tomorrow at noon he will be free, and I will have to pay him $2 million. If I do pay him $2 million, I'm ruined forever. You see, 15 years ago, the banker was very wealthy. He had more money than he could count. But now he was afraid to ask himself if he had more money or more debt. Because gambling on the stock market, risky investments, and his own recklessness and impulsiveness had brought his business to the brink of collapse. The once fearless and confident, arrogant businessman had become an ordinary banker, trembling at every market fluctuation. He said to himself, "Oh, that cursed bet! What have I done to myself?" Clutching his head in despair, why didn't the man die? He's only 30 years old. He will take my money. He will take every last penny of my money. He will get married. He will enjoy life. He will start gambling on the stock market. And I will watch him like an envious beggar, hearing him say, "Oh, I'm very grateful to you. Thank you for giving me $2 million for doing absolutely nothing, just sitting around and sleeping. This is too much." The only way to avoid bankruptcy and disgrace is if the man dies. The clock had just struck 3. The banker listened. Everyone in the house was asleep, and only he was awake, and he can hear the sound of the trees whining outside with the wind. He was trying to make no noise. He took the key from his safe, he put it on his overcoat, and went outside. The banker could barely see anything. As he approached the garden wing, he called the watchman twice. He said, "Watchman! Watchman!" There was no answer. So he said the watchman probably had taken shelter from the bad weather and was sleeping somewhere, maybe in the kitchen or maybe in the greenhouse, whatever. Standing in the dark, he thought to himself, if I go through with this, the suspicion will fall on the watchman and I will be clean. In the darkness, he found He found the steps to the door and he entered the hall of the green wing where the man sleeps. And he struck a match. No one was there. Someone's bed without bedclothes stood there. He peeped through the little window in the prisoner's room. A candle was burning dimly. The prisoner sat by the table across the candle. His back, his hair, his hands are all visible. And open books were scattered everywhere in the room. On the table, on the chairs, on the carpet, everywhere. 5 minutes passed, and the banker stood there watching the prisoner, and he didn't move. 15 years of confinement had taught him to sit motionlessly. The banker tapped on the window, but the prisoner didn't respond. The banker cautiously tore the seals from the door, and he put the key on the lock. The rusty lock groaned, and the door creaked. The banker expected to hear a cry of surprise and footsteps, but 3 minutes passed and it was quiet. It was as quiet as before. Then he decided to enter the room. In front of the table sat a man who looked like a skeleton. Tight drawn skin, long curly hair like a woman's, a shaggy beard, his face was yellow, his cheeks were sunken, and his back was long and narrow. His hand on which he leaned his head like this, it was so thin, it was painful to look at. His hair was already turning gray, and no one would ever believe that this man was only 40 years old. And on the table, just across his head, there was a sheet of paper. And it had tiny writing on it. The banker looked at his sleeping body and he said, "Oh, poor devil, he's probably thinking of the millions he's gonna spend after winning the bet. I could just throw his half-dead ass thing on the bed and smother him with a pillow and no one would find any trace of unnatural death. But before I go on with it and kill him, let me just read what he has written." The banker took the sheet from the table and he just looked at it, and he read, "Tomorrow at midnight I will gain my freedom back and the right to mix with people. But before I leave this room and see the sun, I need to say a few words to you. On my clear consciousness and before God who sees me, I declare that I despise freedom, life, health, and all things your books call the blessings of the world. For 15 years I have diligently studied earthly life. True, I saw neither the earth nor the people, but in your books I drank fragrant wine, I sang songs, I hunted deer and wild boar. In the forest I loved women, beautiful women like ethereal clouds, created by the magic of poets. Poets who visited me at night and whispered wonderful tales. Tales that made me feel intoxicated. Through your books I climbed the peaks of Elbrus and Mont Blanc, witnessing the sunrise and the evening sky painted with purple and gold. I saw lightning splitting the clouds, green forest, fields, rivers, lakes, and cities. I heard sirens singing and the pipes of Pan playing. I touched the wings of beautiful devils who came to talk about God. In your books, I plunged into the bottomless abyss. I performed miracles. I burned down cities. I preached new religions and I conquered entire new countries. Your books gave me new wisdom. Your books gave me wisdom. All the tireless human thought created over centuries is compressed into a small lump in my brain. I know for a fact that I'm smarter than you. And I despise your books. I despise all worldly desires that you chase. Everything is empty, fragile, and as deceptive as a mirage. You may be proud. You may be wise, you may be beautiful. Death will come and erase you from the earth like mice underground. Your descendants, your history, the immortality of your geniuses will be like cold ashes, burned down with the earth. You are mad. You are mad because you have gone the wrong way. You take falsehood for truth and ugliness for beauty. You would be amazed if apple and orange trees suddenly bore frogs and lizards. So I marvel at you. I marvel at you who have traded heaven for earth. I do not want to understand you and to show contempt for what you live by. I renounce the 2 million I once dreamed of. I renounce the 2 million I once dreamed of as paradise and now despise it. And to deprive myself of my right to it, I will leave my cell just 5 minutes before the agreed time, thus breaking the agreement. After reading this, the banker put the sheet on the table. He kissed the head of the strange man. He began weeping. He left the wing. Never before, not even after his terrible losses on gambling on the exchange. Never had he felt such contempt for himself mixed with shame and disgust. At home, he laid down on his bed, but agitation and tears kept on creeping up and kept him from sleeping. The next morning, the poor watchman came running to him and said he had seen the man who lived in the wing climb through the window into the garden. He had gone to the gates and outside and disappeared. The banker immediately went with his servants to the wing and confirmed that he was not there. He escaped. And to avoid unnecessary rumors, he took the renunciation paper from the table and he locked it in his safe. The end.